Today we're going into Filipino folklore. We're going to explore a creature that's really ingrained in Filipino culture. So much so that many people believe in its existence, just like anything else. Let's start with the basics. I'm sure you've heard whispers, maybe even some scary stories. But let's break it down. It's often described as this shape-shifting creature, getting transformed from an ordinary human into something totally monstrous. It's got elements of vampires, werewolves, and witches all kind of mixed into one. But, with that distinct Filipino flavor, one of the most fascinating things about the Aswang is, well, its shape-shifting ability. Like, picture this. During the day, they just blend right into society, got regular jobs, interact with their neighbors. You might even find an Aswang working as a butcher or even a gravedigger. But then when night falls, that's when their true nature comes out. They transform into these, well, pretty scary creatures, often with really grotesque features, and they're ready to prey on anyone who's, well, unsuspecting. And speaking of prey, Aswangs are said to especially love going after, well, vulnerable people, especially pregnant women and their unborn children. It's a pretty chilling thought, right? A winged, monstrous witch sitting on a rooftop and using its long, hollow tongue to pierce a sleeping woman's belly to steal her baby adds a whole new layer of fear to the Aswang myth. Now, you might be thinking, how can you even tell if someone is an Aswang when they're in their human form? Well, there are some telltale signs, according to folklore anyway, like bloodshot eyes from all that nighttime hunting they do. And here's a weird one. Their eyes reflect images upside down. But is there actually any truth to these stories? I mean, some people think that maybe sightings of nocturnal animals like lemurs or colugos got mistaken for Aswangs and they got woven into the myth. But then again, pretty much every culture has its own monsters and myths, right? What makes the Aswang so unique, and why is this belief still so strong in the Philippines even today? Okay, so we talked about what Aswangs are, at least in the way they're described, but let's think about what they mean. What their place is in Filipino culture. Aswangs, they're more than just like figures in scary stories, right? They're really a part of Filipino society, shape how people understand things, the things they worry about. They're kind of like a reflection of how Filipinos think, a way to explain what they don't know and how to handle their fears. It's kind of wild how strong the belief in Aswangs still is. For centuries, Filipinos have used Aswang stories to teach kids about right and wrong, about the dangers out there, especially at night. It's like a warning, right? Be good, listen to your parents, and stay safe when it's dark out. But it's not just about scaring kids into being good. The Aswang is also a symbol, like it represents those bad parts of human nature we all have, things like greed, jealousy, wanting power too much. That's what makes the myth deeper. It's not just a monstrous story, it's about what it means to be human. And here's where it gets really interesting. The Aswang myth is also a way to explain bad luck and sickness. Like, if you can't figure out why you're suddenly sick, or why bad things keep happening, well, maybe an Aswang did it. It's almost like a way for people to deal with a world that can be, well, kind of messed up and unpredictable sometimes. Creates a sense of, like, it's shared experience, everyone's in on it. And get this, some people who study this stuff think that the Spanish colonizers back in the day, they used the Aswang myth to make people think bad things about indigenous police. By saying that Filipino folklore was evil and savage, it was easier for them to control the native population. It adds a whole different layer to the Aswang, don't you think? But even with that influence from the Spanish, the Aswang myth has stuck around. It's changed over time, sure, but it's still here. It shows just how strong this folklore is. It still means something to Filipinos today, even after all these years. Now, Aswangs, they're not all the same, right? They're all sorts of things. Like, it's as diverse as the Philippines itself. There's the Manananggal. This one can detach its upper body and grow bat wings so it can hunt at night. Pretty creepy image, right? Then you've got the tick-taps like a bird, and it makes this tick-tick sound as it looks for its prey. And often, that prey is pregnant women. And let's not forget the Capri. He's a giant who lives in trees and likes to play tricks on people. He's not quite as scary as the others, but still pretty freaky. And those are just a few examples. Each one of these creatures has its own, its own personality and powers and weaknesses. It's what makes the whole Aswang myth so complex and fascinating. All right, so we dug pretty deep into this whole Aswang thing. We've talked about where they might have come from, their shape-shifting, the whole blood-drinking thing, and how they fit into Filipino culture. But now, for the last part of our little exploration, I want to ask, what does the Aswang tell us about ourselves? Because myths and legends, they often kind of work like mirrors, right? They show us our fears, our beliefs, what we think is important. And the Aswang, well, it's got that scary look and it's always hunting, so it kind of makes us think about those basic human fears we all have. Like, think about how Aswangs are said to target pregnant women and their babies. That really gets to that fear of being vulnerable, of losing something innocent. It reminds us how fragile life is, especially new life, and how there might always be something dangerous hidden in the dark. And then there's that whole shapeshifting thing, being able to change from a regular person into a monster. Well, that plays on our fear of being tricked. Like the idea that anyone, even someone you trust, could be hiding something really bad underneath. That makes it hard to know who to trust. It's like the line between normal and monstrous gets all blurry. And we can't forget about the Aswang being linked to witchcraft and magic. That shows how much we're drawn to the supernatural, you know? Like we want to be able to control things with these secret, unseen powers. It reminds us that what we believe can be really powerful, good or bad. And those beliefs, they can show up in some pretty amazing or pretty scary ways. But the Aswang isn't all about fear and darkness. It also shows how tough and clever people can be, how they survive. This creature has been around for hundreds of years. It's changed with the times, evolving right alongside Filipino culture. It's kind of like the Aswang's survival, shows how strong and adaptable Filipino traditions are. They can handle anything, even modern life. Here's something else to think about. The Aswang is sometimes used as a scapegoat, like a way to explain bad luck or blame someone else for our own mistakes. We see this all the time, in all kinds of cultures. People are always looking for someone to blame, an enemy out there. It reminds us to be careful about judging others too quickly. We got to think critically and face our own problems before we go pointing fingers. So what's the point of all this? Well, it means the Aswang is more than just a creepy story. It's a way to understand what it means to be human. It shows our hopes and fears and how powerful storytelling can be. Even today, we're still drawn to these myths and legends. They help us understand a world that can be kind of confusing and unpredictable. And as we wrap up our deep dive into the world of the Aswang, I'll leave you with this. What monsters are hiding in your culture's stories? What tales do you tell to make sense of the things you don't know, to face your fears, and to share what you value with the next generation? That's something to think about as you keep exploring the amazing world of myths and legends.